Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us here in Monaco for the event and participating as one of our speakers.
Well, it's lovely to be here.
And thank you so much for taking the time to interview with us. It must be a very busy period following the merger with King & Wood Mallesons, the Chinese and Australian firm. How's that going?
Well, it's just been announced and we're very excited about it. I mean, clearly China and Australia are very active markets, very important in private equity. We're seeing a lot of activity in private equity in Asia and Australia and globally generally, and so this is part of us moving to a much more global platform.
Absolutely, and it's from the sound of the conversations at this event, having that presence on the ground nearer the markets is definitely a benefit.
Yes, I mean China is just huge in relation to both local funds and exits for European funds and LPs into European funds. Asia similarly, Singapore, Hong Kong, Korea, Japan, Australia. I mean the whole thing is focused around that part of the world. I mean we of course will continue to focus on Europe, but as part of something where we are able to bring Asia into play.
Definitely, and with a global perspective, as you mentioned. And with that additional perspective, what are your observations of the currently, would you say, polarized markets and the struggles some funds are having to fundraise, or not at all in some cases?
Yes, I think I'd start much more positively than that. There are a number of funds that are oversubscribed and raising money very quickly. So you've got a truly polarized market with every different type. And what goes along with that is that the terms and conditions are less standardized than they've ever been. So people talk about standardized terms and conditions, and indeed the terms and conditions of funds, if you compare them now to when I started doing them 30 years ago, they're remarkably similar. But once you attune yourself to the fact that little has changed, there are actually some fairly substantial differences emerging. So we categorise funds into 4 categories. The first being the oversubscribed funds, which raise their money very quickly and are able to not only hold their terms and conditions, but sometimes, if they want to push back a bit. The second category then is funds that raise all their money, hit their targets, but they take a long time over it and need to make some concessions to LPs to do that. Third category, those who succeed in raising a fund but don't hit target. Again, takes a long time. Again, a heavy negotiation with LPs. And then the fourth category, people who, one way or another, don't raise a fund at all, and they're falling back on a number of different strategies. I mean, some people don't even look at raising a fund at the moment and are just using these alternative structures like separate managed accounts, like club funds, pledge funds, and deal-by-deal financing structures. So there's a big variety. We're also seeing different types of funds coming into the market at the moment, like Luxembourg limited partnerships, which is a new structure. We've just opened an office in Luxembourg, so we're seeing quite a lot of them, particularly with the changes in regulation.
Absolutely, and having to keep up with the diversified tactics companies are having to employ in more difficult times, I guess.
Yes, and
Absolutely.
As I say, in response to the AIFM directive.
Absolutely, and that new directive coming in, do you feel that companies are prepared, or are they just setting off on the path of meeting those new directives? How's the regulatory environment in
Well, it's
Europe?
an extraordinary time, and the whole process of the directive has been extraordinary. I mean, as of July, we're now into the position where a number of funds are having to deal with the new situation for marketing. And those funds that aren't yet or aren't going to be within the directive, registered under the directive. I suppose that covers fund managers who haven't yet registered, non-EU funds, Jersey funds, American funds, I mean we're doing a Brazilian fund at the moment who want to market into Europe, and sub-threshold funds, less than 500 million. They're all in, those 3 categories are all in different positions, but broadly at the moment they're there aren't clear rules as to how they market in different countries. So we're in a peculiar situation where the new regime has come in, but nobody really knows what the rules are. We thought before that we'd be relying on the private placement rules of each individual country, but a number of countries have changed their private placement rules to make them more difficult. So depending where you're marketing, it's more or less difficult, or even sometimes impossible. UK and Luxembourg is possible. Things haven't really changed that much, although you're having to notify. In Germany, Austria, Denmark, other countries, you're having to get permission to market your fund, so you're having to register and register your fund documentation and get permission, which takes several months. You're having to comply with certain aspects of the directive, like depository, in this sort of interim period. And then there are countries like France, where it's virtually impossible unless you're French, because you're having to, in order to be allowed to market in France, you're having to comply with French requirements for French managers.
Absolutely. So gaining any sort of clarity is actually part of the challenge as well. And
yes,
interested, Jonathan, in getting your professional opinion on the cannabis presentation we had yesterday. And that's quite a different regulatory environment, a few pitfalls potentially there for that. What's your view on how successful it will be?
It's very hard to know, really, isn't it? I mean, we're talking about a completely different regulatory environment there for the actual product, and you know, also the question whether, from a financial point of view, it's a viable fund in the first place. So, it's an interesting concept, and obviously, it's a headline-grabbing concept. Be interesting to see how it does. I don't think I can say I have a view at the moment.
You'll be watching that space.
Watching that space, absolutely.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Jonathan.
you.